Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It's such a pleasure for us to get back on BSB Live after a long gap. And to begin the new season, who else could be better than Tim Wade? So, today, our very special guest is Tim Wade. Tim Wade has been speaking globally on leadership, performance, and motivating change since 2009. His clients include Ferrari, BlackRock, Dr. Reddy, Spotify, Expedia, and many other well known organizations, as well as prisons, charities, churches, universities, and my favorite, defense forces. He's an Australian born in Asia and is based in Singapore with a very practical, forthright, and humorous approach. Well, for me, Tim has been a great friend. I have met him in first time in 2019 in Singapore when I attended the APSC convention. But more importantly, we got him as a speaker and more than a speaker, a facilitator for a boot camp in Puri last year, and that's where we spent 3 days together. And I got to know this man very well. He's a man with extraordinary wealth of knowledge and wisdom, but more importantly, I found him to be a wonderful human being, one who's ready to contribute. And I've seen it firsthand. He is prepared to contribute to others for their growth. Welcome, Tim. We are so happy to have you today for a little discussion on this subject of leadership unleashed. So, how are you today and how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me. Thank you for welcoming me on your show. We've actually been talking about doing this for, well, ever since I was in India, actually.
Yeah, we've been talking about it, but it's been getting postponed.
Yeah, I think you were
Okay.
just waiting to get your really nice sort of glasses on.
No, that's okay. So, yes, so
So,
let's
so
begin.
today we're going to talk about leaders and leadership, right?
Yes. So, mostly what I'm wanting to do with you, Tim, is to link leadership with the challenges of the future, because that is something which every leader today, particularly after COVID, is struggling with. You've been through, or all of us have been through, all the challenges in the COVID which came suddenly, and
Yeah.
people started getting scared of dealing with uncertainties. And now people have realized that one has to be prepared, one has to be mentally prepared. COVID is gone, but challenges haven't. They'll keep coming, and as they keep coming, we'll have to prepare ourselves to be able to handle them. So let's start with that. What do you think the leaders need to do on priority to be prepared for the challenges that you think are going to unfold?
Uh, this is a huge question. So the question actually, I mean, the answer is, I think the answer is prepare. And then you go, well, how do I prepare? What's coming in the future? And the good thing is, as a leader, you don't have to know all the answers. In fact, you're not supposed to know all the answers. If you know all the answers, you presumably you need to be promoted until you rely on a whole bunch of people who know better answers than you do. Or if you know all the answers, you're running a small business. So I just think if a leader can get to the point where they go, I don't know all the answers, I need to ask for some help from people who are researching a particular subject, and ask them to come in and help. But even if they don't want to ask them, the very first person the group of people they can ask are their employees. They've got all of these people working for their organization. And some leaders are like, I need to know all the answers and to tell everybody what to do. Actually, we don't. We could ask everybody, hey, here's a challenge we think is coming in the future, and here's another one. And what if we get another pandemic? So that would be one thing. What would we do this time that would be different to what we did during COVID? And
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, right? So what would we do differently? Now, in parts of Asia that went through SARS, they had that advantage over a lot of other different parts of the world. So they were able to implement some of those things. And there was an element of preparedness. And we've had COVID. I wouldn't be surprised if we have another one similar to it within our lifetime, for sure. I wouldn't be surprised. And but the thing is, we think we've all been through it and we can just do what we did that time. But actually, if we were really to go back and think about some of the things we did, there's a lot of learning that we can do. So hopefully leaders haven't just gone, well, thank goodness that's gone past. Let's just keep going on doing what we were doing. And we'll just respond and react like we did last time. I think if it was to happen again, there is a huge competitive advantage for those organizations that have a level of preparedness that is far greater than what they had during COVID.
Yeah.
And so what that's going to take is a battle plan. I mean, so you're the military guy, so I'm going to use some battle plan. I'm going to use some military terminology. So what's the battle plan if we face this attack or this a virus, another incident? So that
Yeah.
could be one of them. COVID could be one of them, for example.
So that's a beautiful thing that you came out with, was that leaders don't need to have all answers. Now that is very, very important. So what I, because I was doing leadership workshops during COVID, and I had I had a few experiences, but one of them which is very apt here is where there were at least 2 3 companies where leaders were getting very uncertain. They were getting shaky. They didn't know what to do. But I saw amidst those one who said, guys, I don't know what's happening, let's go together, so I'm with you. So the feeling he gave was that I'm not telling you what to do, let's go together, let's explore, let's do it together. But the most important thing was that he was with them. So I think a leader needs to always be with them, and in the army we say lead from the front or set an example, which is one of the most fundamental leadership qualities, that you can't be expecting them to do something that you're not doing yourself. So coming to a little let me go to a little more depth and say that, okay, if you know that the demands of the future are going to be very uncertain, okay, we don't know what is, and also the leaders need to grow themselves. So they need to grow themselves, they need to grow or develop their teams, and they don't know the demands of the future. How do you balance these 3 things?
Yeah. So okay, so there's a couple of things here. One of the challenges is that organizations under some sort of economic pressure will tend to make some decisions with regards. So if profitability has come down based on the macroeconomic environment, profitability has come down. So what they've got a couple of options. Either they can be aggressive in the market to try and take more market share to increase profitability, or, which is what a lot of organizations have done, they start laying off their workforce. And so they're trying to reduce their cost. By reducing their cost, they maintain a margin of profitability that looks attractive to the market, and they don't think they've missed all their sort of analyst expectations, etc. And that's partly because a lot of leaders' remuneration is linked to their market performance and their share price. But here's the thing: if we have a surplus of staff, we need to actually have a surplus of staff, and there's a couple of reasons. So this is our manpower planning. We need to have a surplus of, so we need to have enough staff to be able to do what we need to do. Plus, we need a margin for annual leave. Plus, we need a margin for sick leave. Plus, we need a margin for other incidental leave, and we can trend all of that. HR will have all the reports. You can trend it all. You can look at sick leave. You can look at these things, but you can also look at the culture that's within the organization as well, and ask some pertinent questions like, what is our sick leave at the moment? Like, I went into one organization and their sick leave was averaging 22 days a year. And I was like, that's ridiculous for an office job type setting. It wasn't a dangerous place. That was way too high. I mean, I would expect 8 days a year, and at the most for an average. So 22 days meant that there was an issue, and the issue was a morale issue. It was an issue where people were getting overloaded with work because they were understaffed and they didn't want to be there, and they especially didn't want to be there on a Monday, which was the busiest day. So they were reacting by going, "I'll just call in sick on a Monday." There's 26 of them in a year, and you can just have a quick look at your HR data and ask a couple of questions. And the question is, if you are trending high levels of sick leave on a Monday, Friday, this is in Monday to Friday workforces. Not all workforces are Monday to Friday. In the Middle East, it'll be Sunday to Thursday. But let's just use Monday, Friday for this example. If I've got a higher incidence of sick leave on a Monday and a Friday and immediately before and after a public holiday, and if a public holiday lands on a Thursday, I've got a huge amount of sick leave on a Friday, you've got an issue. You've got an issue of, you could say it's an integrity issue and get all moralistic and angry, but you could actually look at it as a motivation issue and a morale issue. And people are voting with their absence because they feel either disempowered, out of control, overloaded, nobody's listening, the leaders aren't listening, and they see it as a never-ending tunnel of pressure that they can ease by calling in sick. And if we're pushing people to the point where they're making a decision to deceive by calling in sick when they're not, then we're compromising the integrity of our people and the organization. And as leaders, we need to make some brave decisions. So I started all of that by saying we need a bit of margin. We need enough people to do the job, and we need workforce planning to be able to make sure that we've got enough people to do the job. And we need the margin for the absenteeism that's allowed. I mean, there would have been a lot of times during COVID where, and even now perhaps, where it was harder to get staff than before, that we're saying don't take annual leave, minimize annual leave. Or maybe now everybody's taking annual leave because travel's back on. But there'll be peaks and troughs as to when organizations contract and expand, where they say we don't have enough people, but please don't take annual leave. Now, all that's going to do is back up your annual leave debt as an organization, and you're going to have to pay it at some point. And it's going to be next year or the year after. But think about this. If everyone gets a promotion in that time, you're going to be giving the annual leave that they earned now at a lower wage, and they're going to be taking that leave at a higher wage. And in fact, it's costing you more money. I mean, if I'm being a penny pincher, that's going to cost you more money. So we need margin so that people can take leave. We need some margin so that people can be sick. And we need margin, and we need enough people to be able to be there. And then some countries, you'll have jury duty, and you'll have armed forces leave. You have to go and defense the reservists or whatever it is. You've got all these sorts of things. So whatever it is, put that in there. But then we should have margin for projects. And one of the ones we were talking about just now in the question just before was planning for eventualities that may be in the future. We could have a workshop. Why not have a workshop once a quarter? So most organizations will have a once a year sort of big annual thing where they all come together. They invite me or you to come in and speak as a keynote speaker at the event. And we sort of speak to everyone. They go, wow, that's really interesting. And then we want them to go away and implement some of those ideas and get together as a group. Now, it'd be great if leaders did that with their groups once a month and maybe get together as a group in a quarter. But what if they had these quarterly projects where it wasn't immediately required to be delivered in the next 6 weeks or anything, but it was something where they got to go, let's have a think tank where we think about what happens if. So you were saying about the future, and I think I was talking about another pandemic, but there's other ones, global warming, for example. If global warming happens, I don't know what your belief is in global warming, but if global warming happens to a significant level, and it's not you I'm talking about, it's more the people listening. If global warming happens to a certain level, or heat just rises and gets to a point where it starts to, just have a look at glaciers. If all the glaciers melt, for example, in the Himalayas, all the freshwater runoff that used to come from them is not going to be available to all the people that were requiring that water. So they are going to migrate. If it gets too hot in southern India, they're going to migrate to northern India. And now you've got different set of problems as people are moving to different parts of the country, and you've got logistical problems. Traffic's already a disaster in some parts of India. You've got logistical problems, but I'm not just talking about India. I'm talking about Europe. I'm talking about everywhere. If that happens, do we have a contingency plan as an organization as to how to react? Now, that might seem like, but that is just so far-fetched and far off that is it any point in us spending a day of our people's time doing it? Well, you might argue, no, it isn't. But you could also argue, what a great team building workshop that is. What a great empowering workshop that would be, to facilitate a workshop of change management plans that we could implement so that if something happened, now it may not be global warming that causes migration to shift, it might be a, a contamination in one major city of India for whatever reason that everybody moves, or whatever, some geopolitical problem that happens that people are migrating, and this could be anywhere in the world. So we don't know, but we could play out scenarios. Now, we've come up with 2 scenarios within 5 minutes of this discussion. You could hop into, you could ask your network, ask your people, I would say first. Ask your people, what are some scenarios? In fact, ask them the very question you asked me. Ask your people, what are some of the scenarios? And then let's get a facilitator in, or let's get Jeff from accounting, who's an excellent facilitator, or maybe not Jeff from accounting. He's actually not that good. Let's get Rashid from marketing. He's a fantastic facilitator, and he comes in and does it, and does a great job facilitating whatever it is. So everybody just gets this activity, and they start to go in deep. And once they hit that wall, maybe call in an expert if you've got the budget to do it. But use your people, I guess is what I'm saying. So we're talking about leadership, right? You don't have to know all the answers, okay? So, okay, I'm a leader. I don't need to know all the answers. I've got however many people you have working for you, from 6 to 6,000. Even if you had one person working for you, you could ask them, and they would be able to give. And you've got a network, and you've got people on LinkedIn, and you've got us. Just reach out and ask, and we're going to give you some ideas, and then we can have a conversation. Oh, you can have a conversation with your team. So that's a long answer to a short question.
Okay, great. So I just pitch in a little here to talk about, see, with my 34 years in the military leadership experience that I've had, I found that one of the most important things what you said, it came to us very naturally, because number one, we are an army which keeps moving. You never stay in a place for more than 2 years. So you are migrating, you are in different locations, you are moving from one terrain to the other, you're moving from deserts to mountains, mountains to plains, plains to high altitude and all that.
Agile.
Sorry?
You're agile and you're mobile, and you have to be flexible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, with all that, the manpower that you talked about, we certainly have in our those margins, that cushions that you're talking about, we have them. But one of the very important things that we have to do is to have people multi-skilled, because when people, you have margins, but if they are not skilled for that particular job, they're going to create a hash. So everyone has to have at least 2 or 3 skills other than his primary skill, which has to be known, so that you have a good workforce to be able to take on such contingencies. And the next thing you talked about was contingency plans. For everything, there's a contingency plan in the army. And another thing, a very, very important thing, which I like to say, which the listeners can take a note of, and that is, anytime you go on leave, along with the leave certificate, you have to say that these are my pending jobs, who will take care of in my absence, so that never it happens like in many companies where I go and ask for something. For example, I'm asking for my bill to be paid, and they said, "So the finance guy is on leave for 1 week, so I'll pay you after that." Nonsense. We don't have that. Just because the chap is on leave, that's your problem. My payment should not get stuck because your man is on leave. So there has
Yep.
to be a system of continuity. There has to be a system of multitasking, so that these things are carried out. So that was beautiful. Now, Tim, going ahead.
Actually, before you go into there, I just want to add one thing. So you were mentioning in the army, you need people to have multiple skills, so that they're the backup if somebody with that particular skill goes down somehow, or it gets shipped off to another area. And I think so from my corporate experience, what I did, you can play this a couple of different ways as a leader. So the leaders out there listening, with multi-skilling people, it's a very big temptation to then go, I'm going to multi-skill everybody. Now, the challenge with multi-skilling everybody is you end up getting jacks of all trades rather than masters of some. So what Brigadier was talking about was they had a couple of extra skills. So they didn't multi-skill them in absolutely everything. They were basically a backup skill. They were great at this, and they were backup for this and this.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So it is one
yeah,
primary skill and maybe two subsidiary skills. That's it.
yeah. So there was an occasion where we had a particular workload that we found there was 400,000 items in backlog. The temptation was multi-skill everybody so that we can move them around, but actually it was far more efficient to single skill people. But we wanted some multi-skill people. So here's an alternative to. So option A is everybody has one skill. Option B is everybody's completely multi-skilled, which is very expensive, and you don't want to do that. Option C is what Brigadier was talking about, is primary skill plus a couple of secondary skills. Option D, and in fact, the utilization of the primary skill with a couple of secondary skills was to rotate people around, but keep them focused on a single task. So what I did is I got them to work through the same task repetitively for a couple of weeks. Now, I know that sounds boring, but what it did is they got in the zone, and their productivity was extraordinarily high. But so that they didn't get bored and burn out and slow down, after that couple of weeks, I'd move them into a different task. And then they would get up to speed and go, and productivity was super high again. And we had a whole sort of culture of motivating to get through this backlog and the big prize at the end. And so that was really important, because single skilling to get through a crisis was really, really important. However, what I had was a team which I called the SWAT team. You know, the SWAT team, special weapons and tactics. So the SWAT team is just like, you've got some criminals stuck in a building with a hostage. Let's get the SWAT team. The police are all outside pointing at the front door, and the SWAT team come in helicopters and slide down the side of the building and smash through stuff. And Bruce Willis is there, and all that sort of stuff. So whatever's happening, the SWAT team is this multi-skilled. They can do everything. They can come out of a helicopter on a piece of string. They can be
Slither down.
snipering from that building over there. They can, I don't know, they're basically superheroes. So you have this superhero team that can do a whole bunch of stuff. And the reason that was really important is, if 5 people were sick over in item number 1 that needed to be done, I could take my SWAT team and go, okay, so let's have a quick layer, have a look at what's going on today. It seems like we got 5 people down over there. If I've got 100 people there, 5 is only 5%, but I'm down by 5% than what I expected. SWAT team, 5 of you, I need you over there today. Boom. So that they're the multi-skilled team. They're a multi-skilled team of specialists. 5 of them went over there to fill that gap. But then the other thing is and I'd move them around. They would basically go in and solve the bigger problems and fill the gaps. And they were a higher ranked. They were my inner circle team. They let me know what was going on in a different way, but they were the highly skilled ones. So that's another different way to play it. It's like your Marines, or I don't know if you have Marines, but it's that highly skilled, super team where they have a beret at a slightly different angle or something. Anyway, yeah them.
So that is nice. So Tim, you've also been talking a lot about positive change. So in today's rapidly changing world, how do you think can leaders inspire positive change within their organizations so that they can drive some meaningful results?
Great question. Okay, so that question is, there's a lot of change happening. How do leaders inspire positive change within their organizations? Okay, what you're asking, well, the way I interpret that question is, the leader needs to inspire positive change. That usually means that the leader wants to change something, or has noticed that something needs to change, or top down has said we need to change, or there's a recognition that change needs to happen. And typically what will happen is this. So there's a couple of different scenarios. Scenario 1 is the leader will say, we're going to change this, and we need to now implement this new IT strategy at the same time that marketing is doing a revamp of something or other. And everybody then does the first thing that they do, which is they push back and they resist. So we want to inspire positive change. We need to think about, why are they resisting? And they're probably resisting because we have an expectation that they're going to operate at 100% productivity. And then we're going to implement this change, and they're going to continue operating at 100% productivity. That's what we think. So it's 100%, 100%. The change happens 100%. In fact, we think when the change happens, they can operate at 120% productivity. And what a brilliant leader I am for increasing productivity. But what tends to happen is I know how to do this, and I'm operating at let's say 100% productivity. You can argue that is that possible? Doesn't matter. Let's just say it's 100% of whatever I can do. So I'm operating at 100% productivity. You've brought me a new set of processes. If I'm to implement that, my productivity is going to drop. I know that I need to still deliver on this to hit my KPIs. Therefore, I need to work overtime, after hours, on the weekend to get it all done. So if you don't have that margin for the change, the margin of employees, if we fired everybody to go lean and now we want all this change to happen, it's going to be a bit dumb, because then we're going to bring in consultants at a higher rate to fill the gap, or temporary staff at a higher rate who are now unskilled. So think about the changes that we want to implement before we release everybody. And also, and I'm talking as if everybody's releasing everybody. There's a lot of organizations that aren't releasing people, and in fact are looking to hire. So how do we increase in that margin? Rather, we need people to understand that to inspire the positive change, we need to say, I've got your back. We're going to look after this workload. We know your productivity. We expect it to drop to somewhere between 40 and 60% for the first week. And as you get up to speed, it's going to come back in. There may be some teething issues. I've got your back. I'll protect you from everybody else asking about stuff. Don't worry about your KPIs. I'm your leader. I will stand in the way of the arrows while you try and get everything done. And so what people want is, they don't want a leader that, certainty is really important in a leader, but we've also said you don't have to know everything. So you can't have absolute certainty all the time and then also not know everything. But what we can create is a communication between us and our people, that they understand that I'm here to serve you as your leader. I'm going to help you get this stuff done by managing up, managing sideways, getting you the resources that you need, and being able to do that. But this change is coming in. IT is doing this. It's a global thing. It's got to happen. And here's why. If you want to inspire the change, we tell them why this is a good thing. In fact, you don't tell them why it's a good thing. What I do in the workshops where I've taken organizations through these cultural changes or these process changes is that I will ask them a couple of questions. So these are tactical, okay? I'll get the people in the room and I'll ask them, what is great about working at this organization? And I'll just give me some ideas about what's great. And they'll list up all these great ideas about why it's great working at the organization. Challenge, there's great opportunities. There's chances for promotion. There's a lot of change happening. It's dynamic. I love it. Okay. Now it's really important to say what's great about working at this organization, because when you start talking about the change, it's going to feel a little bit less great. And there's going to be some resistance, and there'll be some people going, this is stupid. Why is management doing this? And all this sort of stuff. And then, I've even had an organization where they've listed all the things that were great about working in the organization. And one of them was all the change and opportunities and challenges that we've got. And I go, well, what's really tough about working at this organization? And they listed all the change and the challenges that we've got. So it was both a positive and a negative reason for working at the organization. So if you want to inspire the change, what I do is I get my people on board for the change. And I ask them, why is this change good? What could be good about it? And they might go, well, nothing. It's stupid change. And you go, okay, well, if it was a good change and if it does make sense and there's some reasons that we're doing it, how could it be a good change? What I've done before is then I've taken a video camera or a phone and I've stood in front of the CEO and I've just gone, why is this change good? Why do we have to do this? Why is this? What gave you the idea for this? Why is it important? And of course, if you don't have access to the CEO or the leader, whatever leader you do have access to, ask them to just record a message to the phone to go, here are the reasons why I think this change is good. As if you're talking to your family, not as if you're talking to a bunch of people who are paid to serve you. No, you're talking to a group of people who are choosing to be there, and we don't really have control over them. We have stewardship. We have a responsibility like a father figure. We've got, or a mother figure. We've got a responsibility to look after them. And for some of them, we need to be a little bit disciplinarian. And for others, we can have a conversation that they go, I get it. I love it. This makes sense to me. I'm going to work through this change. And those ones are the ones we want to be able to nurture them in a what common parlance would be a steering committee, but actually it's not really a steering committee. It's this group that is your internal advocates, I guess. They're a
Think
group.
tank.
They're a group that they believe in it. And so when I'm sitting in the warehouse going, this is a stupid change, Ali, who's sitting on the forklift, is going, actually, it's a really good change. And I trust Ali because Ali's been here for 40 years and he knows everything about the warehouse. But Ali's been in my workshop and Ali's on board. And when they turn to Ali, Ali goes, here's why this is a good idea. And then everybody goes, okay, I'm not so sure, but I trust you, Ali. They may not trust me up in upper management or the consultant over there, but they'll trust Ali. So it's really important to have Ali. So I did this workshop where I had to choose 30 people from the senior, the most influential people, most influential, not the most senior, the most influential, to be in that room for I think 3,000 employees. And it was a guy like Ali, who was a forklift driver from the warehouse, was one of the ones that were in there with the CEO and a bunch of other key influential people who understood their business and could also throw and say, this is a red flag for us, this is a risk, but also to go back and go, we've talked this through and this really makes sense. And when he's on board or she's on board, the rest of your people are on board. It's like I mean, you're in the army. I haven't been in the army. I've watched a lot of army films. So the guy that's shouting, drag yourself under the barbed wire in the mud, you pieces of pig's feet or whatever it is, rah, rah, rah. And everyone's like, I hate you. That's not the leader. The leader's the guy that's in there with them. That's saying, come on, you can do it. Let's. So that's the Ali in the warehouse. He's the one that I want in that meeting with me so that we can inspire the positive change. But fundamentally, it is painting the picture that we're going to go from this mountain down in that valley, which is a bit scary, and up the other mountain. And that mountain is better than this mountain. And we need to get to that mountain as an organization, as a team, as a group of people, as a business unit, as whoever your team is. And when we get there, we're going to celebrate like crazy because this will be a great achievement. And this will be the biggest learning and the greatest learning you've had in your career so far. And we got to be saying why this is good. Not, hey guys, this is really stupid. Upper management wants us to do this. I guess we have to do it. So let's just bloody do it. No, that's probably not the best way to do it. But if we can paint the picture as to why that's better, and if I don't know why that's better, and I have to paint the picture to my people, then I need to go to whoever's running this thing and ask them, why is this better than what I'm doing right now? And why do we need to do this? And sometimes, to be honest, sometimes it's not better than what you're doing right now, but there is a greater good and your division is going to suffer. It's going to be a bit harder and messier for your division, but we need to do this. Or there's a new compliance rule, a new accounting practice, and that it's just going to make everything harder, but we have to do it. But I'm going to back you up, and we're going to do our numbers to work out how many more people we need to make sure that we're staffed appropriately to be able to take on this extra workload. But between now and when we get a new person, and by the time they get up to speed, that might actually take 8 weeks. So between now and then, I got your back. I'm here for you. If you need some help, come and let me know. And then you can set up these different challenges that they can do to get the work done. Another longish answer to
Tim, that was very interesting though. And what you're saying now, I do battlefield to boardroom, and I bring a lot of these things similarly. And I use a facilitation process called divergence convergence, where you get diverse ideas from the people in the workshop and ask them, what do you want? Like you said, what is good about this company? What do you think could be better? And they have to just write it, and then we do it on small chits, which then they get converged into, let's say 120 ideas in the room could get converged into 4 great ideas which everyone agrees to. So the buy-in is very good. Their people don't now, they all feel that change is required. And the best part is That is not the change that the management said. That's not the change that the consultant or the trainer said. That's the change that they said they want.
Yep.
You know, for example, in a very recent workshop, these people said discipline. They found that discipline was lacking and they wanted the discipline to be tightened. Now, that's the last thing if you tell people that I'm going to set you right, I'm going to tighten your discipline, that is the last thing people like. But when it came from them, it became very powerful. So, continuing with the discussion, as we see these challenges of the future and all we are talking about, there's also a need for leaders to bring in a culture of continuous learning, because this corporate world and the world at large is dynamically changing. The speed of change is so fast now. So how do you as a leader, when you're facing the challenges which are 360 degrees, you are facing a challenge from your boss, from your stakeholders, from your peers, from your subordinates, and there you also have to see that your subordinates are learning all the time and progressing. So I'm talking about the culture of continuous learning that could be developed for the ever growing business landscape.
Yep. So the question is, how do we develop that? Is it? How do we
Yeah.
develop this
How
culture
do
of
you
continuous learning?
develop a learning culture?
Okay. Okay. So most organizations are going to have some learning and development department. Bigger organizations will have a learning and development department or a training department. And that department's job is to put on lots of trainings for everybody so that everybody can be trained. As an operational manager, sometimes that can be really irritating. It can be really irritating because then they might just go, well, so it depends on the way the organization does it. Here, choose some training for your people to do. And by the way, you've got a budget of, minus this to work with. And so then they're like, okay, well, I'll get my people to do some of this sort of learning, or I've got some people to do this learning. Or some leaders will say to their staff, go and choose your learning. But I think that's losing a huge opportunity. And I think to create this culture of continual learning, as a leader, there's two things. One, we need to do it ourselves. Continuous learning and the leader doesn't do any learning means it's not continuous learning. It means you learn until you get to that position and then you stop learning. Okay, so that's number one. The number two, I'm going to add another one. There's three now. Number two, which wasn't my number two, it was my number three. I may have forgotten number two, but anyway, number two is, if you're the leader and you're doing all the talking all the time, there is a pretty good chance you're not learning anything. So let me just say that again. If you're a leader and a bunch of other leaders and you're doing most of the talking, there's a good chance you're not learning anything, because we got to be listening to some other people's advice and contemplating how would this be practical in my organization? How could I implement that? That's really interesting. That's a good idea. I wouldn't quite implement it like that, but I could implement it like, tell me more. Tell me more about that. How did you do it when you faced this issue? So to do that as a leader, so when we're in a group of other people, so right now is different, okay? Because we're doing all the talking. Right now is a little bit different because that's the purpose of this. That's the context of this conversation. But if we're in a group of other people and you got to go in there, you'd want to go in there as a leader, go in there with more questions than you have a need to validate your authority or position or status or anything else. So this is where humility comes in. So go, oh yes, well, I'm the chief poo bar at blah, 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 blah. And then somebody goes, oh, well, tell me about how you handle this sort of thing. And then you're coming up with all these sorts of reasons about how you manage to handle it. Well, there's a really good chance that throughout that, you may have helped a lot of people, which is great, but you may not have learned anything. So number one is ask more questions and be a better listener. Number two is display continuous learning habits yourself. And what could they be? So ask your team, what would be continual learning habits? Maybe it's like you get a group of people together and go, we're gonna read a business book a month. We're gonna read a business book. Sushil's he's written 5,000 business. They're all behind him, I think. There's a whole bunch of business books. You can get one of his. So choose one of his business books. And what was it? $1 Million Second or something was one of your business books. Yeah. So grab one of the business books and then say, okay, we're going to read this business book over the month, depending how long the business book is. And then let's discuss it. Let's discuss one element per person that we can implement in this particular business book, so that we can just, okay, what can we implement? What can we learn from this? That could be one thing that you can do with your team, but you don't do all the teaching. You get them to teach it. So there's an element of continuous learning there. The other one is to be very involved with your direct reports. It doesn't have to be the 6,000 people or the 600 people or even the 60 people that report to you or that come through that's within your department. It's the 5 to 12 that report to you directly. Have more one-on-one time with them and ask them and be a mentor to them, be a coach to them, learn how to coach someone, and then seek to get a coach yourself, either within the organization or external to the organization. Somebody that can coach you to be able to think broadly and have those conversations. Your organization would have a budget for that. Ask your manager, is there a budget for me to have a coach, or is there a coaching or mentorship program within this organization? And if there is a continual learning budget for you to have a coach, then seek out a coach that could have those conversations with you and drive insights and ideas for you to go, that's really interesting. I never really thought of it like that. So the coach is going to deal with you more specifically. Continual learning could be to say, I'm going to go off and learn this. I'm going to do this course after hours. I'm going to learn this. But if it's within work, how do I get even better? How can I buddy up with someone to be better at what I do? Maybe it's to have a 15-minute mentorship program. 15 minutes doesn't sound like a lot, but it builds up. 15-minute mentorship program once a week over a cup of tea with somebody to say, do you mind if I meet with you 10:30 every Wednesday morning for a cup of tea at the cafeteria or across the road or wherever it is? And I want to come with you. I want to ask you one question in each of those sessions. I want you to ask me a question because I really want to learn something about what it is you do or this part of the organization. And I'll buy the cup of tea. And they'll go, sure. And that does two things, by the way. First of all, it gets you to learn from somebody who's in another part of the organization. Secondly, it gives you visibility to an influencer in a different, or a senior leader, because presumably you're going to ask somebody who is a bit more senior position in that part of the organization. You're going to get visibility, and they're going to go, who do we need? We're looking for somebody to step in this particular role here. Who do we need? Well, actually, I really like what Tim's been doing over in that part of the organization. How about we tap him on the shoulder for this potential promotion? Because most of the promotions aren't advertised. They're internal. Somebody goes, who do we have? They sort of do a bit of recruiting within, and then they go, okay, this person's moving. And then you get your promotion. You can be promoted far faster, get promotions far faster by being more visible in the organization outside of just your department.
Okay. So when I was talking about continuous learning, I'm also talking about the curiosity to learn, where it becomes a self-motivated thing that people want to learn and move ahead. As a commanding officer, when I was serving, I did in a way that, one was, of course, that book thing that you said. We used to do that book a month for sure. But over above, we used to do a officers training class or absolutely an informal discussion where we would pick up any one subject and people were asked to, put in their views on that. What used to happen was that people, and the subjects would be something which are totally professional. Now, what would happen is you would find that there were some people who knew a lot and the others wouldn't. And without saying a word, those who didn't wanted to now be better prepared for the next month because they should not look like people who don't know anything. So it was a self-driven, curiosity-based initiative to make everyone learn on his own and then seek. Then people would go to that chap and say, yeah, you spoke so well on that. Where do you learn it from? Which book did you read, or what did you do? And he said, oh, I went and did that course and that is where I learned. Can I have your notes? Or can we have... So there was a little, not even a competition, but you envied those people who spoke so well, who looked so knowledgeable, and everyone was saying very good things about them. And obviously, the commanding officer also gets to know who are the guys who are really keeping themselves abreast with knowledge, because knowledge was always said in the army as the number one thing. If you don't have knowledge, everything else is futile. If your professional knowledge is not there, that's the first thing a leader must have before you do anything else. So, coming to another very important question, which is today a great challenge with most organizations, is how to foster ownership and responsibility. People find that and many leaders where I've done leadership programs, one of the main persistent complaints or problems or challenges that leaders have faced is that we have to push people, we have to tell them what to do. They don't do it on their own. Why shouldn't they take ownership and do it on their own? So, what would you say to that? How do you think a leader should foster ownership and responsibility so that people are self driven?
I love it. It's a great question. I decided to move the microphone here so that I could be closer for this particular question. The way to foster ownership is to give them ownership. I mean, it's as simple as that. And a lot of people don't want to give up power. They don't want to give up. It's like it's the, if you want something done, you got to do it yourself. So somebody like who says that is typically not able to give up ownership or give up control, I guess. So to foster ownership, the technique that you're using with putting up ideas in the room, I have a similar technique. I call it the solution storming session. If anybody on watching this wants a copy of how to do that, reach out. The solution storming session, and it sounds like the one where you're brainstorming ideas or coming up with a whole bunch of ideas, is not telling people, here's what we're going to do from A to B, and look, we've got this challenge, and here's my list. I've decided, I've come up with a solution, and that's the solution. That's what we're going to implement. A better leader would go, well, here's the problem. I think this is the solution. And they've come up with the solution, but they don't say the solution. They tell the people, hey, we've got this problem. What do you think? This is their inner circle, their direct reports, that group of people. Here's the challenge that we're facing. I'd love to know what you guys think about how we can solve this particular problem. How do we solve this? And then you get people's ideas. And as I'm going around the room, there's a whole bunch of different people who got different ideas. And then I come to, Brigadier Sushil. And Brigadier Sushil has got this fantastic idea. And it's the same as my idea. And so I've gone, yep, I like that, because when I was thinking about it, I have the same idea. So I think that's I like that way forward. But then he adds this other bit, and I go, however, I didn't have that. And I think that is really good. So what I've just done is I've validated his idea, and I've already done the pre-thinking on that one. I validated it. But when he's come up with another idea, some leaders would go, oh yeah, I also thought of that one, and I think that's a really good idea. So they'll claim that they came up with it. But what's so much better is to say, I didn't know that, and Sushil did. And so he came up with that idea, and I really like that. I hadn't thought of that, and I think I think we should definitely implement that as well. How about you? And then you go to a different person as well, and you go, and I like this one idea. A couple of others that I had was this and this and this. But I also like this other person's idea over here. So now all of a sudden we've contributed to the solution. Now, if everybody's contributed to the solution, there's a good chance that if I was to say to that group of people, all right, who's the best person to implement this? Or who's the best person to implement that? Or I say to them, which of these areas of solution areas are you most interested in seeing fixed? And there will be, if I've got 10 possible things that we can solve, I will always ask them, which one, go to the one that you think you would most like to see solved. So they've got a vested interest in this thing being solved, because it's going to solve a problem that they're probably experiencing, or it's been a bugbear for them for so long, and they just like to see the thing fixed. And then get them working on coming up with who needs to be responsible. They may fear that you're going to give them all the work to do. That might be the fear. I don't want to take on any more work. They may fear that, but their job is not to do it all. Their job is to manage that project, and maybe they've got the expertise to do some of it, but their job is who's it supposed to be run by? I want you to run this project. Now, I did this for a bank in Singapore, and I had 22 people reporting into me. It sounded like a lot, but I had 22 people reporting into me, and we had 25 projects that would all come up with, and they had all written these projects. Because I said, magic wand, what would you fix? And they'd fix all these things. And then if the money was coming out of this budget and we had this much, which ones would you choose? And we went through them, and there was a bunch of those that we decided, we probably wouldn't choose those, but let's present them anyway. And then the executive vice president was coming to see me, and I set it up that he would stay longer, and we had all these more junior leaders present these solutions, the solution that they were invested in. And I gave them a way to present the solution, which is what I call a one-page business case. And they presented it. And by the way, if you want the one-page business case, just reach out. I'll send you the one-page business case. And better still, just go to sharpin.net, sharpin.net, and that one-page business case solution video is there. Anyway, all of these people then presented their solutions, and because of that one-page business case, the business leader, the executive vice president, once they worked out what the format was after the first presentation, they were able to easily evaluate all these proposals from a cost-benefit analysis, a financial proposition, which one would have the best results for his bottom line. He's interested in bottom lines and P&Ls and everything else. And so we got 22 out of the 25 approved. 22 of the projects out of the 25 were approved. And the 3 that they didn't approve were 3 of the ones, one of the ones that was quite essential but very expensive, and 2 of the others that we wouldn't have approved anyway. And that one that was very essential and very expensive ended up getting approved because the EVP couldn't approve it. It was far too expensive. That one had to go to the chairman, who ended up approving it. There was a bit of a reason for that. It was a golf course decision with one of his friends who complained about his bank. And so all of a sudden he rang up the EVP. The EVP went, well, I've got this solution. And it went through. But the idea was empower your people. And all of those people who presented said in their performance review, this was the highlight of their year. It was the highlight of their entire year, that they were able to present these solutions for the organization, to demonstrate their intelligence, their articulateness, their ability to be able to conceptualize solutions to problems in a bank. And they were quite junior, and their respect level and their visibility across the organization went up, and people knew who they were now. And what about that person for this next promotion? And the feedback that comes back from them is it's part of their growth and development. So if you want continual learning, we got to give our people opportunities to shine, opportunities to contribute. If we want ownership, we got to give them the ownership to deliver, and we got to give them the opportunity, not the opportunity, but we give them the opportunity to succeed, and we give them the possibility of failure. They need to be able to fail because the stakes are then higher for them, and they feel it, and they're going to grow from that particular opportunity. But I coached them through that. Before they presented, they had to present to me. And then I was like, well, what about this and what about that? And they went away and tweaked it, and they were like, okay. And they were prepared. This is their military training. They were prepared before they went into battle. You don't just give them a gun and go, off you go. You get them trained, right? I'm using all these military analogies. This is your field, not mine. But yeah, so they were prepared, they were ready to go. And when they did it, I was like this super proud father. I was just so happy for them. I wasn't a leader that was like, if I presented all of this, I would be like the most ingenious leader and definitely get a promotion and everything else. Because what am I going to get promoted to do? I'm going to get promoted to be a leader of more people. Sure, there's a bigger budget, but there's more people. And if I can't handle my small group of people, why on earth would an organization give me more people to sort of be a bad leader with? So I got to be better at managing people. Anyway, I could talk about this for hours, and I'm sorry I haven't let you get a word in edgeways, but I'm very passionate about really good leadership. If people can just use these things and just think sensibly about it.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you so much. That is profound. And Tim, I also want to come to another question, which is today, more than ever before, getting the attention and that is about remote teams. With the new culture, people have teams all over countries, cities, and all that. And even in the same city, I know some companies who have 5 offices in Mumbai, so they are sitting in different offices, so they are not physically seeing each other. And sometimes a leader has immediate subordinates who are not physically around. So in this culture of remote and virtual teams, how can leaders build trust and collaboration and bring in a sense of purpose in their company?
Yeah, I how can they okay, so there's a couple of different ways. If they're remote or not necessarily working together as a team, or if they're on this sort of format, is it?
Yeah, so they are not physically in the same office. They could be working at different locations. So they would be in communication only through emails and maybe Zoom calls or something like that.
Yeah.
You see, I
Okay.
quite tell people that in the army we didn't even have, there was no internet, there was nothing, and a commanding officer probably will have his 4 company commanders maybe a kilometer apart,
Yeah.
and there is just no way of communicating other than the radio
That's
set.
when you're on your radio, right? It's just like,
Other than the radio set, I said, yeah.
how
Other
you
than the
going,
radio set.
Brigadier? Got any smokes? Okay, so I yeah, look, I did a session for Expedia once, the travel company, and this particular group were coming to Singapore for a conference, and it was the first time they'd ever been together, and they've been working together for a couple of years, and every single person in that team was in a different country. Every single, but even the senior management was in England. The manager that was the one that called me in was in Hong Kong, and his team were in Australia, 2 parts of Australia, so different parts of Australia, Singapore, Malaysia, Korea, and I think the Philippines, something like that. It was a small. It was about 8 people in the end, and that was the challenge. The challenge was, I want you to do a team building workshop for us and our people. And I said, well, there's only a few of you. Why don't you just use the budget to go to a bar and just have a few drinks and get to know each other? He goes, no, I've seen you do your stuff. I want you to come and do it. So I went, okay, I'll do it. And what I did was what I ended up doing for that particular one is I devised this thing where we went all the way around Singapore to all these really interesting travel destinations. Like we went to Gardens by the Bay, went to Marina Bay, the bay itself. We went to the aquarium. In fact, we started in the aquarium. So these are tourist destinations, okay? And they're a travel company. That's why I thought tourist destination would be really cool. But what we did at every stop, so one of them was the aquarium. And what we did at the aquarium is I made these cards. I don't know where these cards are, but let's pretend this is not the card, but let's pretend the card is about that big. And I made the card, and there was a instruction for the leader and prompts for the leader to manage. And each person at each stop was a different leader. Okay. And so the card was, I called it the impromptu the impromptu conference, but this one was impromptu and impromptu team building. And so the leader so the very first question is, what's the greatest adventure you've been on? What's the most amazing adventure? And the prompt questions were ones that really tested you. It wasn't just like fun. One that tested you where there was a challenge that you had to overcome it. And everybody told amazing stories, and there'll be some sort of little person from accounting who you was really quiet, had this amazing adventure where she had sort of traveled through the desert somewhere and got lost and stuck and stayed at some person's house and everything else, and everyone was like mind blown. So they didn't even know this about her because it's not something that comes up in a Zoom call when you're talking about business stuff. So we did relationship building. But we talked about what's the greatest adventure, because an adventure is about change. An adventure is about growth, about taking a risk, about doing something different. Then we went to something called the Trick Eye Museum. And the Trick Eye Museum is one of those sorts of places where they have a lot of optical illusions. Like you stand on the floor and you take a photo from up here and it looks like you're climbing a giant building or something like that. And so it was all about different perspectives change your view of a particular activity. And then we did a debrief after that, and we talked about perspective of people, perspective of roles. And then I had them prior to that fill out a questionnaire and a personality profile and a couple of and a conflict management profile. And they'd filled out these things. And then I presented these profiles and went through it with them. When we got to gardens, and that was really important because it was about I have a thinking style or a learning style or a leadership style or a communication style that's different to yours. And if I understand that there are different styles, I can move away from expecting that everybody speaks to me or everyone should communicate in my way. And I can understand that people communicate in different ways, and I need to learn those different ways. And I need to be able to communicate with them in their way of communicating so that I can best build that relationship and get my point across. And there was various other stations. So to cut a long story short, what we did was we looked at different aspects of relationship, different beyond just work. So for remote teams, what they find out over a period of time is they find out about each other over a period of time, but little bits at a time. But if I was to ask you right now, Brigadier, so this is a question you didn't know was coming, mainly because you're asking me the questions, but I'm going to ask you a question now. What was the highlight of your last week or the month? What's been your highlight? I know there's been lots of highlights, but if you were just to choose one highlight, what would be the highlight?
So the highlight for me was that my mind is much more important than my body. Now this is what I realized, that I was in bed, I was not well, and I have a little thing of completing my target on walking every day at least. I have a knee problem, and I'm trying to battle that. So I realized that it was not my knees that were creating a problem. It was my head that was creating a problem when I wanted to give up. And when I went to the doctor, he said something which actually made me think even deeper. He said, clinically, when I see your x-ray, you need knee replacement just now. I don't even know how you're standing, because if I see this x-ray, you shouldn't be standing. But you walked in, you didn't come on a wheelchair. So that means clinically you need a knee replacement. Symptoms wise, you don't. So that showed me that. So the highlight was that I am what my mind says I am, not what my body says.
Okay, so that would be your insight for the week, but it's a pretty cool highlight as well. I would get as well. So, for example, if you might ask, but what was really interesting about that quick conversation is that in less than 45 seconds, I've learned a bit more about you. I've learned that you've got a knee problem. And what's really interesting is I'm just recovering from a knee problem. I had a football accident last November, and today was the day that I put on the list. I'm going to play again this Sunday, and I'm a bit worried about it. But who would know? I mean, you and I, we had the conversation. I don't know you got a knee problem. You don't know I've got a knee problem, but now we've got something in common. We've built our relationship a bit more, that we're both struggling with a knee problem. I mean, I understand you a little bit better. Now, that whole conversation can take 3 minutes at the beginning of a Zoom call, for example, if it's just you and me having a Zoom call. Like, what's your highlight been for the week? Now, the thing is, if the relationship is really well built, only if it's really well built, what's been your biggest challenge over the last week? You don't have to say this now, but if we were having a private call without thousands of people listening, if we had a private call and we were going, okay, so today we're going to talk about this, but hey, what's been your highlight for the week? And you told me that. And then what's been your biggest challenge or the low light for the week? And you might be just like, yeah, a friend of mine's father died or something like that. And it really sort of hit me from a mortality thing, or from a I really love that guy. I mean, he was a mentor to me, or whatever it is, or the low light has been, I couldn't do my walk. And for me, I'd got 99 days and then I'm bedridden. I can't do this stupid walk because of this knee, and it just motivated me to want to get it done. But I, mental stuff and everything else, but I saw it in a different way. But I didn't like to be incapacitated like that. And it made me think a little bit more about my mobility for the future, for the next 20 years. I got to look after that or whatever it is. So it's like, then all of a sudden we build this deeper relationship with somebody. But you're not going to ask, hi, so Brigadier, yeah, you're one of my 3 staff members. Yeah. So nice to meet you. What's been your biggest challenge or catastrophe this week? I mean, you're going to go, well, I don't know this person. I don't want to tell them my biggest catastrophe. It's why you get people asking in a job interview, what are some of your weaknesses? And they'll say, oh, my biggest weakness is I got to see a job through and I'll stay up late until I get it through. And it's a bit problematic in my personal life, but my commitment to getting the job done is there. And everyone goes, wow, this is great. The problem is everybody teaches everybody to say that. So it's not really a biggest weakness at all. It's so what we want is authenticity. What we want is relationship. And if you're working in remote teams, or if people are working from home, or if people are distanced in that way, what they're missing out on is relationship. And if you look at social media, how people can be vitriolic in social media, because we're not face to face and we're not having that opportunity, that could be a bit of a challenge. There's one other thing I want to add very briefly, and I've only just for the first time used it yesterday. It was something that came across came into my sort of radar, I suppose. And that is a product online called Focus Mate. Focusmate.com. As in focus and mate as in MATE, like friend. And so this particular website or community or whatever it is, so if you're an organization, you got 100 people, you could presumably in Focus Mate, I don't quite know how, I know how it works to a degree, but you could set up your own community of your 100 staff members. And if they're working from home, you could hop into Focus Mate. And what the idea is, it's such a simple idea, but it's such a cool idea. The idea is you log in and you go, all right, so it's whatever time it is. Let's say it's 8 o'clock in the morning. Say 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to jump on it's 7:50. I'm going to jump on Focus Mate at 8 o'clock in the morning. So you go in there and you go, okay, I'm going to have a focus session. It goes, how long do you want? 25 minutes, 50 minutes, or 75 minutes? I'm going to go 25 minutes. 25 minutes. And now what am I going to get done in 25 minutes? I'm going to do this, this, and this. Okay, I'm going to do this power agile. It's sort of this sprint. I'm going to do this sprint for the single activity, 25 minutes. I'm going to get this thing done. So go to Focus Mate, put it in, go. At 8 o'clock, I get partnered up with somebody somewhere in the world who's using this technology. And or if it's my organization, and I'm going to get partnered up with somebody somewhere in my organization. That would be even better. Somebody in my organization. If you're a solopreneur or an entrepreneur with a small business, you might be doing, with somebody in the world. But if you've got a team of 50 people and they're all over the place, you might get them to use this thing, and they can only choose the people within that team. And so all of a sudden I'm sitting there and, you've been paired up with somebody. An alarm goes off on your computer. Bing, it starts. Your camera has to stay on the entire 25 minutes. And right at the beginning of the call, I've been paired up with Brigadier Sushil. Great. Hi, Brigadier. How you doing? And you go, great. How are you, Tim? And I go, great. This your first time? You go, yep. Okay, let me talk you through it. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to tell you what I'm going to get done in this 25-minute sprint. And you're going to tell me what you're going to get done. And then we're going to go on mute, but our cameras are going to stay on and we're going to get it done. There's a countdown timer on the screen that's going to count down. When the 25 minutes is done, the alarm goes off, we unmute and we go, how'd you go? And then you're going to tell me what you got done. It's an accountability buddy. It's somebody there working. And this is not going to work for everybody. It may not work for you. You're like a super disciplined person. I work better if there's somebody there. If there's somebody with me, like an open office environment or in a meeting room where we go, let's get this done. You work on this, you work on this, you work on this. We got 30 minutes, go. And we're doing it. It's startup mentality. It's like, let's get this. It's part of agile. It's that quick stuff. It's like it's a sprint. And you go. And at the end, 30 seconds. Yep, I got it done. I got this and this. What I said to the guy in my session yesterday is I got 7 out of the 8 done. And I'm just going to finish off the 8th one after this. And he goes, yep, I got everything done. So he was in America. So it was late night for me. It was early morning for him. He goes, yeah, he was going through his calendar and he was setting everything up in his calendar. Then he was going to go and have a shower, jump in the car, go to work and start, doing his day. So that was just part of his routine was in the morning, He's making an appointment with someone. He's putting it in his calendar. He's scheduling a meeting to get that item done. And so if this was a remote team using something like that, and you could use FocusMate, or you could just use Zoom and set people up and go, this week you're going to be paired up and somebody can pair them up. You go in there and you sit down and you go, hi, Sushil, hey, tell me, what was your highlight for the week? You can change the process a little bit. You go, yeah, my highlight for the week was this. And then what was yours? Oh, my highlight week was this. What was your biggest challenge? Only if they know each other, right? What's your biggest challenge? Well, for me, it was this. For you, it was that. Okay, what are you going to work on today? Well, in this next session, we've got a meeting on this. So you have a meeting. Or in this next session, I'm going to do this and get this done. Now you're learning a little bit about my workload, and I'm learning a little bit about your workload. And I get a bit closer to knowing about what you do. And then somebody goes, hey, I need a meeting with somebody in that stupid marketing department isn't doing this thing. What's going on? You go, hey, I know somebody in marketing. I'll speak to Brigadier. He's in marketing. I had a call with him yesterday. And you're building relationships all around the business. People are knowing what you're doing. What's your highlight for the week? I just got awarded, best something or other gold medal for this. People now know that you're a performer, a high performer. This is, but you're not using it to market your position in the organization. You want to actually be an authentic, real person, because people will tell. Oh, and the other thing is, on that FocusMate one, you got to rate the discussion. You got to give it a like. If I liked having that session with you, even though it was just like, yep, I'm going to do this, you're going to do that, then I go, yeah, I'd have a session with that person again. Because the danger is you get some creep on the line who goes, wow, you're so beautiful. And then somebody's like, okay, I don't want to have another session with this person. So it's like, how do they keep it? And there's rules and everything else, and you just set up those rules. So that's another idea.
Okay, Tim, so we've already gone past our time, but I still want to ask you one more question before we finish.
Yep.
And the last question I have for you, which I've been, it has been raining in leadership everywhere, is what advice would you give to people to get their promotions and pay rise?
Okay, great question.
But we'll have to keep it short because I have another meeting at 6:30. So, and we're already at 6:13. Yeah.
Okay. All right. This is a really interesting one. I've got a whole bunch of information. If you really want to know more, you can ask me. Okay. So reach out, tim.sg. It's there on the screen. So find me. My contact detail will be in there somewhere. Reach out. I'll point you in the right direction. But to give you some clues, first of all, be good at what you do. That goes without saying. But you can be good at what you do and nobody knows. And for some people, this is really frustrating, especially when I'm so good at what I do, and yet I keep getting overlooked for promotion. Why is that? Now, that could be because of a personality thing or a clash or the way that you deal with people or an abruptness or whatever it is. But it would be a good idea to ask somebody if that's the case or have that awareness. But more often than not, it's a lack of visibility. So if I was to give you one tip, because Brigadier has to go to his meeting. If I was to give you one tip, it would be to create a report. And I know that just sounds like I don't want to create another report. I want you to create this report. And it is your weekly, you could do daily, by the way, but weekly progress report. Okay. And this is a one-pager. You could set up a template in the email. If you want to know what's in it, send me the thing, but I'll explain what's in it really. So it says, these are my top 3 to 5 things that I've accomplished in the last week. I've completed it. It wasn't the same thing. I sent out report B, and then next week I sent out report B, and then next week I sent out report B. Report B is part of your satisfactory performance review. What is the thing that was above and beyond? I fixed the disaster in such and such a place, and we set up a new procedure that stopped that ever happening again. That'll probably save $3 million. Whack that in a thing I did, over a 2-year period. Whatever it is, that could be something there. Or we successfully saved this particular client. That was an achievement. What was the achievement for that week? Top 3, 1 to 5. But you got to put something in there. If you don't have anything in there, it's one of those things where, I need to do something better in my next weekly performance progress report. Then under that, you go, here are the top 5 things I'm working on in priority order. Usually It's the top 5 things your manager has asked you to do. And you've put them in there in priority order. And then something I need help with. I need your help with item number 3 up there. I need you to speak to Jeff in marketing or whoever it is, Anil in logistics, and get this thing moved out or fixed or whatever it is, because I've been waiting for a reply. A very simple sentence, not a giant email, just Anil in marketing to get rid of this. It could almost be cryptic enough for the manager to go, what about the logistics one? Or else it's going to do this. And then there's something else in there as well, but then there's something I've learned this week, and you put in something you learned. Now, here's the reason why that is such a critical, and you do it on a day that is not a busy day. If Monday's your busiest day, and Friday everybody's like working half strength and wants to go home, Wednesday morning you got nothing to do, send it every morning at Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Do it in that lull period where you got nothing urgent to do usually. It doesn't have to be at the end of the week or anything, just on the same day, Wednesday 10 a.m. And you send this report to your manager. Your manager goes, what's this report? It's just an update on what I'm doing. And your manager goes, no, I don't need that. Never mind, just keep sending it to them every Wednesday. The reason is this. First of all, you're saying, this is the help I need. Your manager has the opportunity to have that help with you. If you can get a meeting with your manager to say, hey, I sent you this on that weekly report, that's the help I need. That allows you to do that. The other thing is, the manager on a Friday will typically dump a bunch of stuff on you and go, hey, I need this by Monday morning. I've got to work through the weekend to get that done. But you go, is that more important than these things in my top 5 list? Where would that go? Would that go number 1 now, and I move all the others down and they'll be a bit more delayed? That gets the manager to go, no, those 5 are far more important. Let me give that one to someone else. Now, you might be like, no, I want to do everything. But no, you want to do the most important things, the things that get into that list at the top of things you've accomplished, the most important thing, the most valuable things to your manager. If this thing doesn't even get into that top 5, it's lower. Let the manager give that to somebody else. You do the most important things. Then you become the manager's trusted person to get the most important things done. And then every time you've completed something, you're putting it into that top things that I've completed list. Performance review time. You now have 52 weeks of proof that you've done this. And if there's like an average of 3 things in that list, let's say you've only been there for 40 weeks, 45, let's say 52 weeks, let's say whatever, 45 weeks, and there's 3 of them in there, you've got 135 really cool things that you've completed over the course of the year. 135. Most people go, well, I did that really good thing. If I think Brigadier has to go. But 135 things in that list, there is no way your manager, first of all, your manager knows because they've got all of those lists. Secondly, it's really important, really easy for you to create your performance review when your manager goes, hey, you got a performance review. What you do is you take those lists, the top of each of those emails, and you put them in that list and you go, hey, to prepare for our performance review 2 weeks beforehand, I thought I'd send you this list of the things I've completed. They've all been in your email over the course of the year, but or the last 6 months or whatever it is. Here you go. Oops, I've got a little crack in my room. But here you go. And then the manager goes, fantastic. Thank you for that. And then you get to be able to say, great. Then you've got 135 things. The manager has to give you the performance rates. When the manager goes into bat for you to get the promotion or the pay rise, they've got the one thing that they never, ever have, and that is a document of evidence as to why you should get it and not the person from the other department who's also fighting for it. You will get more pay rises much faster with promotions, much faster, and earn a lot more if you did that. If you want that actual template, find me on tim.sg and I'll send it to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. So I think, Tim, thank you so much for that lovely conversation. We really enjoyed. And I know that this is such a topic and one could go on and on. There's so much to talk about that. But it's been an enlightening conversation, a captivating one. And I'm sure people would have loved it. So thank you so much. And to all the viewers, anything more on leadership, just keep in touch with us. And we'll be very happy to share our experience and knowledge with you. As also, do listen to the recording if you came late or you missed out on something. Because this is going to be on all 3 platforms, YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So thank you very much for being here and investing your time into this conversation. I've really enjoyed it, and Tim, I'm sure people would have loved listening to you. So thank you very much, and see you next Wednesday. Again, we are back with voice, and that's going to be the power of voice is going to be the subject. And I have a very, very good, very very knowledgeable and very experienced guest coming. Guess, keep guessing who it is. Thank you very much, and see you next Wednesday.
Thanks for having me.